Hey, this is Mark Swanson, MTC Media with your Ohio State Notre Dame wrap up. The Buckeyes win 21-10. Notre Dame definitely did not look overmatched in the game tonight, where they're 17 and a half point underdogs. Marcus Freeman didn't look like the moment was too big for him. What it did look like was Ohio State just has more weapons, was able to wear Notre Dame a bit there in the second half, and they end up with a victory. Notre Dame starts off 0-1. It will get easier for Marcus Freeman. Hackley, his first two games as Notre Dame head coach was a bowl game, and then turn around and go to Ohio State to open up the next season. But Tyler Buckner also was getting his first start, 10 for 18, 177 yards, was so good overall, so good early on, and then kind of wore down to him. Ohio State started to get to him. Problem was is that Notre Dame just could not run the ball. 30 carries, they only got 76 yards. Michael Meyer does what he does. He had 5 catches, but only 32 yards. Really wasn't able, with the exception of one catch, really make that play after a catch, which for a tight end, Meyer is very good at. But the game got off to a start that Notre Dame definitely could use. A 54-yard hookup between Buckner and Lorenzo Styles got Notre Dame into the red zone eventually, but only could come away with a field goal. Talked about that in our keys for victory, that there's no way Notre Dame could settle for field goals in this game. And then the Buckeyes would respond. They had a drive where they really picked on Cam Hart, completed a couple passes, including the touchdown pass on him, got an interception in that drive, gave Ohio State the 7-3 lead, and then Notre Dame comes back. And you see what this offense can do. A 10-play, 87-yard drive was a perfect response. Get a 1-yard touchdown pass. You're up 10-7. Eventually, you go into the half, 10-7. After the defense gets a very, very good hold, you start seeing some missed tackles at the end of the first half. They were able to hold. Ohio State had this beautiful drive, ends with a missed field goal. So Notre Dame was up 10-7 at halftime. But I think it was a sign of things to come with Notre Dame's defense, because in the second half, they just really didn't tackle well. They didn't get off blocks well. And then Ohio State started getting that running game going. And probably the key moment, you're in a game, it's 10-7 still. Your offense is not clicking. You get a break, and you have Ohio State in 3rd and 11. And then Notre Dame, Al Golden, decides to blitz on a 3rd and 11. And Ohio State cashes in on a 24-yard touchdown pass. And things just never turned around for Notre Dame. They really had one decent drive. Then after that, that was aided by a penalty. But even then, they had a penalty. They only have 1st and 25. That turns into 3rd and 18. Then Reese calls a quarterback draw, which gives them nothing. It was a 5th straight possession for Notre Dame that ended in a punt, and they really weren't in it for the rest of the time. You could just feel it at that point, that even though the score was 14-10, that the score felt like it was more than 4 points. Ohio State, after a punt, just went on another clock-eating drive, 14 plays, 95 yards, over 7 minutes, ends in a touchdown, gets them up to 21-10, which is where the final score would end for Notre Dame. But you have to take a look at this game. There was a lot of positives. Granted, a lot of the positives were in the first half, which makes people forget. Now, the same things happened in the second half. People remember, like, oh, yeah, well, they got it going, and, in the second half, and you can see things come. Well, it happened in the first half for Notre Dame. One of the things they're going to have to look at is, hey, got to have a better running game. The running backs have got to be able to contribute more. Maybe it's maybe play calling, a little bit more continuity between the offensive line. Notre Dame won't be playing Ohio State every single week. Maybe that gets the running game going. Freeman and Reese, I thought there was times, like at the end of the first half, when Notre Dame inexplicably passed to stop the clock, where Freeman had this kind of like, what the heck is going on? Maybe they need to get back on the same page there. And Al Golden, who had been patient with his play calling on defense all night, and one of the biggest plays of the second half, which turns out to be one of the biggest plays of the game, He gets impatient, puts his safeties in a bad position, and Ohio State finally gets the cash in. You can say it was inevitable, and I wouldn't argue if you feel like it was inevitable. I just felt like for Notre Dame to win, especially in the second half, being up 10-7 at halftime, they really, really need to be able to run the ball in the second half. Reese comes out on that first drive of the second half, and they just get pass happy. And Ohio State, you can see, is getting home. Uh, Reese would have had a big play on the first play of the second half, but the rush got there and kind of threw the pass off, and they stayed in his face the entire time in the second half. Notre Dame just could not hold the fort across that offensive line, and it didn't help that you couldn't keep them off by running game. One of the things I thought we would see out of Notre Dame, especially on that 3rd and 18 or whatever the case, was a screen pass. I didn't think Notre Dame really had a screen game going at all in this game. In that second half, you see Ohio State just pinning their ears back and coming over aggressively. Uh, Maybe you use the screen game as an extension of the running game. Notre Dame did not go to that. So, again, you start off the season 0-1. Certainly wasn't a bad showing. You can say this. Notre Dame played a traditional power that's ranked second in the country and did not lose by 1,000. And as funny as that may seem, it's not really even a joke because of late they've been losing these games by 1,000. They go on the road. Shows you that Freeman, the moment's not too big for Freeman. The job's not too big for Freeman. What it will require for Notre Dame to do, and what we're going to see about Freeman and this coaching staff, along with this iteration of the team, is how do they respond next week? Now, next week, they finally go home and they'll open out their home schedule against Marshall, followed by Cal coming out to South Bend. And in those two things, they're going to have to show some continuity among the offensive line. So they don't have these things when Ohio State went tempo, Notre Dame's defense just kind of had the wheels come off. And those are some things that are going to be on film. You're going to see a team like Marshall, a team like Cal try. What can Notre Dame do to show that they've adjusted to that, and can they get their running game going? So again, Notre Dame drops opening night, 21-10, and a great day overall of college football. And we'll see you next week. Marshall comes to South Bend, and we'll have our pregame during the week, and certainly post game after next week's game. It's Mark Swartzen from MTC Media.